Hello and welcome to the HR People Pod, the CIPD's fortnightly podcast bringing you the topical stories and expert insights on issues impacting the profession and the world of work. My name's David D'Souza, I'm Director of Profession at the CIPD, and this week we've got the two best guests that we will bring you this week. We have... That's you. It's your bit. You need to say your name now.
Just this week. Oh, sorry. I'm Trish Hewitt.
You're certainly in the top three this week, aren't you, Trish?
Fabulous. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
What do you do? What's your background, Trish?
So I run Haylo HR, which is a HR consultancy, and I'm also the CEO of Resolution at Work.
Fantastic. And that second bit's a new bit, isn't it?
Yes, very new. June. Yeah, so...
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And John?
Morning, John Dawson, Chief People Officer for the Law Group. We own and operate hotels in Europe and the United States of America, where I've just got back from, hence my voice, so apologies in advance.
You have, you saw, we'll come on to music in a bit actually, we're going to get into a subject, but you've had a good week from the entertainment point of view, haven't you?
Yeah, I've just come back from New York, watched a little band called Oasis, so had a great week, David, thank you.
Some of you may have heard about them. So, context for everything we do, and I think it's particularly pertinent today, is that we will be talking about things in generality. So we'll take a story from the news or something that's currently being spoken about. We'll talk about it in a general way. If we're talking about individual case law or organisations, it's just to look at the general principles sitting behind that. So first thing that's been, I think, causing some conversation is we're looking at some headlines that sparking debate around the use of AI in workplace disputes. So organisations like ACAS are exploring AI and digital tools to manage conflict or to discern actually what should happen next, promising speed and efficiency that can come from that, given that we know that in fact there's an arising number of workplace disputes and conflicts that need resolution. More widely, that brings up some questions around, is it possible to use technology to solve human problems? Will people even listen to it? And how could that be deployed in workplaces? So the first thing we're going to talk about today is that, Trish, you mentioned that you've recently acquired an organisation.
It's very well timed.
So, all of us will have had to dealt with conflict in the workplace and the costs of that and the impacts of that as well. What are your thoughts about the use of technology in that space?
I feel like when people have got conflict, so when individuals are upset in the workplace, using AI just takes away from the fact that that whole situation needs empathy. We need to have a look at kind of how people are behaving. I feel like it just needs a person. I think AI is really cool. I think it could potentially support in things like helping mediators create the questions that they want to ask or running an approach past it. But ultimately, if two people are annoyed, the last thing you want is someone going, hang on a minute, let me just pop it through ChatGPT and then give you a response. It just kind of loses that empathy that I think is really important.
Do you think there's maybe a role in it for providing some of the scaffolding and support, but not for decision making?
I think potentially, yeah. I think AI is a really good tool to support us with doing a lot of things, right? But equally, there's bias built in. It doesn't get things right, and there's some legality issues, right? So I think it's important, if you're going to use it to support what you're going to do. But ultimately, if you've got two people in an organisation who are in a place of conflict, and your response to that is to pop it into an AI tool, you're probably out of your depth, and you probably need a bit of help.
Interesting. John, same thoughts or vary a bit?
Yeah, very, very similar in many ways. We all use AI. I certainly do every single day. I agree with yourself, as in that human touch is, you can never lose that really. What was kind of staggering for me was when I heard about this and saw the article was the amount of potential savings that ACAS believe that they can save. I think it was like 2 billion. It was something like really, I was like, wow, eye-watering. So I was sort of really intrigued to understand better how they came up with that number. But I do think AI can be useful by, like you say, by analysing certain data, providing overall summaries. But I don't ever think we're going to get away from being able to pick up, the phone and speak to someone from ACAS and really have a pragmatic conversation to understand, how the individuals may be feeling at the time, sort of like put across sort of like what the organisation can do in certain ways. And I think that AI could make that process very, very functional and take away that human touch. So there is definitely a place for AI, and it does help me summarise my emails every day, make my life easier, but I still go in and I still will verify the summary is actually, giving me the right type of information. Has anything in there that's really significant be missed. And I think that could be the risk by using AI for certain all cases, let's say, particularly with the ACAS, say.
What about kind of earlier kind of in that kind of piece? So by the time something's reached ACAS, it's normally gone through a degree of mechanics internally quite often. Thinking about how you reduce, and I think it's probably important to say harmful conflict in the workplace. So that's conflict that's either damaging people or it's damaging results and performance, because actually some conflict and certainly disagreements are a really healthy thing to have in any environment. Do you think if you've got teams in dispute or people that aren't getting on well with each other, having that kind of third party intervention needs to come from a person, or do you think actually there could be use for AI to go, maybe even, you know, saying to people, you should have a look at this in a different way, or if you reframed your argument, that might be more useful or constructive in terms of engaging?
It also, I don't know if you saw the piece on, you know, the team that created ChatGPT and how they were teaching it the emotions and voice levels and things like that to actually generate responses. So I think the piece of what that AI technology could generate, it could have been fed by certain bits of information that's generating a response that may not be the right response, and that someone who's in the room could read the room a lot better from a human perspective as well. So my view would be it may be a tool in future that can provide some suggestions and recommendations, but as to whether that is a better response than a human doing it, still up for debate for me.
Yeah, I don't think we're at a stage right now where AI can replace a human interaction in terms of managing conflict resolution. That might change in the future, and I'm sure there's pieces of AI that exist right now that we just don't have access to that are more kind of complex and nuanced. But I think the thing that makes what we do as HR professionals interesting is the people, right? Like a redundancy situation is a simple thing to manage, but the thing that makes it difficult is people. An argument is an easy thing to manage, but the thing that makes it more complex is the way someone's reacting. Because I could be sitting here telling you that I'm super comfortable. I am. But, you know, if I wasn't, and you needed to analyse the nuance in like the tone that I'm using, my body language, something like ChatGPT just can't do that right now. So I think you could definitely use it to support, at least in the guys that we've got right now. But I think there's something so special about the human touch, right? And that's why we do what we do.
Really good at pulling apart arguments and inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Or even finding common ground if it had a summary, but working it through and getting buy-in from people, having an understanding actually of some of the dynamics around it. It's much more challenging, isn't it?
Definitely.
If you step back and think about it, if there was a difference of opinion, let's say, and that was just fed into AI and it just produced an outcome that, you know, you'd be like, well, I'm not happy with that. Well, the outcome works for me, so I'm happy with it. Move on. I can't ever see it getting to that level. It would need someone as an interim say, okay, let's kind of just discuss and debate this and let's, you know, understand why and the reasons for it. But yeah, that human touch makes such a difference.
It's going to be a really interesting one, I think, for professionals to follow over the next few years. And I think a couple of aspects. One, because of the pressure that is on that system, full stop. So something needs to be done to give people access to justice and also to allow organisations to progress, because it's, you know, very draining, I think, for everyone involved when things go badly. And secondly, just within organisations as well, there's a cost involved there as well. So it's keeping a lookout for tools, but it's also remembering the unique things that professionals can bring into that environment. Really briefly, we're going to move, because it's important that people recognise you are fully formed human beings, aren't you, as well? So we're chatting earlier about music and what your favourite music or your best gig has been. So, John, you were in New York and you saw a little band called Oasis. Is that your favourite ever gig?
Do you know what? I shouldn't say this. I'm lucky my wife's not going to listen to this, hopefully, but I actually thought Oasis were better in New York than Wembley. They were absolutely brilliant. But my favourite gig, believe it or not, was actually watching Oasis in the Hard Rock Cafe in Las Vegas. And I was just there off chance having lunch and didn't realise we were playing. This was back in the early days.
Oh, wow.
And it was in front of like 1,000 people. My wife was there as well. So that was probably my favourite gig of all time, because it was just such an intimate place. They were so big at the time in the UK. They were just sort of starting off in America then, so I was lucky enough to go and see those. So I've got to say that's my favourite one.
Okay, because your wife was there.
I know. I love those caveats.
Hedge my bets there with that answer, right?
Make sure she's all right.
And what would you go for?
You know what? I got to see Mariah Carey recently, which was epic. But I would say my favourite was seeing Lauryn Hill, because she was just amazing. Her voice was brilliant. Wyclef came out. She brought her son out. So I'm thinking this is as close as I'm going to get to Bob Marley. So yeah, it was just brilliant. My daughter was there. So yeah, it was just a really lovely experience.
And did you see Lauryn Hill and Wyclef Jean at one time, two time?
I love that. That's so good.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
so
you.
quick.
I didn't know that was coming. I'm quite proud of that. We may end this podcast here, actually.
I think we should put David on the spot now and throw him off. But what's yours?
What's mine? Do you know what? I said it on a podcast last year. It's seeing Olivia Rodrigo, which may not feel particularly demographically like a tight fit, but it was the first gig that my daughter went to, and like watching her face light up was just absolute magic. And I still maintain Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo is one of the best songs released in the last 20 years. If you haven't heard it, and there's a confusing amount of people that haven't, go out and listen to it. It's got all the feels.
I still don't know who she is.
Still don't know who she is.
No,
I mean,
I
you've had
don't.
like a year to
You know,
listen
the
to
first thing you're going to do when you get in your car and go home is literally go and put that on, right?
I mean, I kind of feel like a year ago that was a reasonable position. She headlined Glastonbury this year.
I mean, I'm sorry, Olivia.
Olivia Rodrigo, if you're listening, that's a heartfelt apology from Trish. Right. We've got a section that it's become increasingly popular, I think, which is where we're taking questions from the CIPD community and putting them to the experts that we have with us. And the question that's kind of coming up in the forums at the moment is around older employees, and I guess it's twofold. One, are they getting the support that they need ahead of retirement? And secondly, are organisations putting more time and effort into supporting other groups? So if you're trying to support people through an entire life cycle, in fact, we're doing more for people early in their careers. We're doing more for certain groups when they hit kind of key life stages than we might be for people who are approaching the end of their careers, retirement, or want to keep working and want to keep advancing. So any hints or suggestions, but also some thoughts on that theme, because I think it's a really interesting question.
As well as sort of overseeing the hotel side of the business, I've recently been given the opportunity to look after our real estate side of the business as well. And they're two very, very different, I'm going to call it demographic of teams and individuals. And one of the things that I was talking to the CEO around is actually this topic. We've got some amazing people on the real estate side of the business, but many of them are coming to retirement age and are looking forward to that, and was like, okay, so what are we actually doing to one, backfill those roles, but also that level of experience that we're going to lose, what are we going to do, and how do we actually support those actually winding down, because that's what they want to do. So it's one of the areas that has just literally landed upon my lap only a few months ago that I'm actually looking at, and it's what are the things that we can kind of do with that. How can we we just put we've looked at our sort of like performance competency-based framework, looked at how we can sort of like change that to develop people coming through, but actually support those leaving the business as well and passing that knowledge on. On the hotel side of the business, it's the completely opposite end of the scale. It's taking school leavers out of school, out of college. How do we develop individuals like that? But also, how do we develop them not just within our business, but more from an industry perspective as well? So I think it's a great question, and probably something that organisations don't think enough about, that sort of, I call it sort of hire to retire life cycle as well, and what sort of things can you put in place as well. So maybe ask me back in a year's time and I'll tell you how that's gone.
Okay, John, all right. You said it had been exactly a year since you came on.
It has exactly a year to the day. So
there you go. Commitment. We'll get you on in exactly a year's time to talk about how that's going. Any thoughts on this one?
I suppose it's that piece around kind of intergenerational workforces, isn't it? And how you look after people who have potentially got quite different needs and quite different drivers. Something I've been talking about recently is kind of reverse mentoring. I think that's a really cool way of working things. And I've not done it myself, but I think maybe organisations can potentially think about that and how you support people who are at different ends of the age spectrum.
And that's, like, to bring it to life, that's where essentially, historically, a mentoring relationship would have been someone more senior in the organisation, someone more junior, and you flip that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's brilliant. But I suppose I I'm slightly controversial, I suppose, when it comes to things like this, because I think we should just be treating people in the same way that we would treat them regardless of their age. And I know that might be a little bit controversial, and maybe it's just a little bit simplistic. But I think if people are towards the end of their career, we should be still treating them in the same way that we would if they weren't. It's just understanding what their drivers are and what they want to do, right?
And what their needs are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand that people may well have different drivers. But I was talking to somebody else about it the other day and saying, I'm in my 40s. Don't tell anybody. But what drives me is very different to other people in their 40s. So if you lump me into a bracket and say, people of this age all want this, we're not the same, right? It's just understanding that kind of individual preference, I think.
Go on then, I'm biting. What drives you?
Do you know what? What drives me? I want to make the world a better place, and that sounds really shitty, doesn't it? Also, I don't know if I can say that word. Should I say something else?
Can we bleep it out?
Yeah.
We'll bleep it out. I think everyone should know that you swore. I think that's cool.
It proves that it's not AI driven. There you go, and there's a human touch.
I just think, in the small way that I can, I want to be able to make the world a better place. Now, I know that HR is not going to make everybody happy and make everything better, but if I can help my clients make their workplaces better, we spend so much time at work, right? And I'm sure we've all been in those jobs where it just feels horrible and you just hate it. If I can do something to help stop that with the little knowledge that I have, that definitely drives me. And in whatever way I can, I think that's the thing.
That's nice. More people doing that is only going to make the world a better place.
Oh, thanks.
So next up, we've spoken about conflict at the start of this and about can use technology to help resolve it. We're diving into a topic that is subtle on the surface, but potentially kind of a bit more serious. So could repeated eye rolling at work contribute to a hostile work environment is the question. Although I'm not sure it is the question, and we'll get on to that. So a recent case in Edinburgh saw a dental nurse awarded £25,000 in compensation after experiencing what was described as rude and bullying behaviour from a colleague. Among the cited behaviours, and I think that's really important, was repeated eye rolling, something that people might see as trivial or just part of a normal conversation, but in this case was shown to be a pattern of repeated behaviour leading to a resignation. Looking beyond the headlines, is there anything we can learn from this? And the other one that kind of caught the eye this week was a headline that said, "It is now okay to call your boss a blank head." I don't think that's what any reading of the outcome from that tribunal would actually show. I think there's always a lot of other things going on. So I guess the question is twofold for me. Do we think that, how much of an impact do we think those subtle gestures in between people have? Can it destroy relationships? Is it okay occasionally? And then secondly, how unhelpful do we think the media is in terms of summarising some of these cases when there's more going on? That's a really leading question, I understand it. But Trish, if I come to you first, in terms of conflict in the workplace, there's obviously verbal kind of cues that people aren't getting on, and then there's non-verbal as well. How big a part do you think that plays?
I think context is the key. In particular with that case, when you read the detail of it, actually this individual raised issues multiple times and they were ignored. So I suppose, and also when we're talking about context, it's how the person receives it, right? If I'm receiving it in a negative way and I'm telling you continually that I'm receiving it in a negative way and you do nothing about it, that's an issue. I do think the way that things are reported is to grab your eyes, right? And it's a headline to grab your attention. But when you look at the detail, actually, there's a failing here and something should have occurred. I feel like I've missed your question.
No, I think that's it.
I think it is, yeah. I think it's just that, I think understand the context before you kind of judge from reading a headline, I think is quite important.
Yeah, I think it does make me eye roll. So because quite often friends will send this to me and go, "This can't be right," and I'm like, "It isn't right. That's like a fraction of the thing that happens." And in fact, there's normally far more important things that happen in the background. And actually, I would say sexual harassment cases are reported really badly from this point of view as well, because quite often there's a pattern of behaviour that's been happening for years, but a newspaper will latch onto one thing and go, "Can you believe that the payout's this size?" And it's unfair to the victims and it's misrepresenting what's happened. John, I've not left you much to go with there unless you disagree. But in terms of because you manage a lot of people in a quite high pressure environment at times, How do you spot signs of conflict, but also how do you make sure it's proportionately understood on both sides?
Yeah, it did make me smile, especially when you see these glorified headlines, right? You've always got to really look at the context, as in that's whenever you see those pop up, it's always a case of, okay, they're picking on a little piece of probably a big area here as well. But, it did make me smile when I read that, because we work in, my role works with lots of different cultures, lots of different countries. And a quick story about sort of, body language and sort of how that can be interpreted on an international level. We work, we've got properties in Amsterdam, the Dutch, very straight talking. And for years, I have an amazing CEO called David Taylor. We created this hotel together back in London 10 years ago, and we had a Dutch hotel manager called Edwin, and great guy. And we would go into some meetings sometimes, and something would be said, and then Edwin would come back the following meeting and look, this is what I've done. We're like, okay, he's clearly not getting the message here. And about 3 years ago, we did a big team build in Amsterdam, and as part of the gift in the bedrooms, it was what the Dutch say and how the English interpret it. And funny enough, both of our flights got delayed, so I'm sat on one plane and my CEO's on another plane, and we pick this book out, and literally I go to message my CEO and he messages me saying, I wish we'd have had this book when we worked with Edwin. And it was to do with, sort of how the British say, what do you think of this idea? And we'd say, oh, yeah, that's great. Let's park it till next time. What we're saying is, we think this is a really bad idea. Let's move on. Edwin would take that as, great, they love my idea. I'm going to do some more work and come back. And like, just that as an example for me, different cultural differences, how people behave, their gestures as well can be really interesting when you look at different countries. So, it just made me smile when I saw that pop up this morning. So there's my little story. I've got nothing more to add on that one, unfortunately.
Thank you. We'll take that. But yeah, genuinely, I think it's a really important thing for people to do. I know it may sound odd, but read the proper outcomes from tribunals. And finally, it's caught the back pages more than the front, I think, this one. But what can HR learn from a messy transfer saga? So for anyone who follows football or who has accidentally tuned into the news recently in the UK, there's been a controversial transfer involving a footballer called Alexander Isak, where basically he's been courted all summer. His club wanted him to stay, and in the end he's ended up transferring to another club, which always creates a problem for the club that he's left in terms of how do you replace a really high-class player. We're using that as a tenuous in to talk about succession planning. So every organisation has talent of different dimensions, but you'll have some people that are really pivotal because of either their skill set or their seniority and accountability. How do you make sure that you get smooth transitions and reduce the risk of that? What can people do as practitioners to make sure that their organisations can mitigate that as effectively as possible?
I have loads of friends who are big Newcastle fans, so I'm not very happy that he ended up going to Liverpool. And I think one of the things with this particular scenario is it's very, very unique, I would say, where player power is more than let's call it the employer power. I think generally in most organisations, you're not going to see a scenario like that where someone effectively goes on strike to leave to go and work somewhere else.
Yeah, you just resign, well. Don't you?
You resign and go somewhere else. Or if someone has a conversation with you and you want to go somewhere else, generally the employer can make a counter offer or have a conversation. But I think to kind of flip it back to the succession planning piece, it's something particular within hospitality side of the business that is really important to us. And I can share some practical examples of actually what we've done this year at Law Group. For example, I have a head of talent called Simon Tetley, and one of his objectives this year was to actually do a full succession planning review with all of the individual GMs of all of our properties. And what we kind of did with that is we looked at we did performance-based analysis. Underneath that, it was like the person in the pocket. Who do we have within our teams? And what do we actually do to develop them, to get them ready for the next move? Because we want, obviously, to grow our own people. But there are situations where there's not a person ready to move up. So the next sort of challenge was, okay, how do you then go and, source the external market and identify external talent, a bit like Liverpool did in many ways, to actually then go and connect with those people and say, hey, listen, if you have any future opportunities, would you be interested in working with, and actually proactively go and do that. And that's quite common, by the way, in hospitality, that people will kind of go out and have people in external environments that if someone does move on, that they've got that relationship for, if they've not got that internal talent. So that's sort of my practical example of how we do it within hospitality. And I've got to admit, by having a really robust plan in place, a document that shows that when those opportunities do arise, you've got a plan in place, it really does help.
I think that's half the issue, isn't it? People don't plan.
Yep.
Or you have succession plans that are based on the person that the CEO likes, and not necessarily the skill set that they actually have. So yeah, I think the whole having a proper plan is crucial.
Yeah. Who would be the successor? Are they ready now? If not, what development do we need to give them? Who would caretake? Because I think that's often people get those two mixed up. If someone's out for 2 months, that's a really different thing to we need someone who's going to take us through the next few years. And then, as John says, who would you go out to on the open market, offer them £300,000 a week in a 5-year contract, which is totally normal in any other organisation. I do like that. Yeah, it's not very similar to football, is it? Our role.
As part of my own personal development, I was really interested in potentially going to be a HR director of a football club. And I know, I won't name them, but I know a few. And as part of that, maybe I want to explore this. I went and spoke to them, bought them lunch, had a coffee, tell me about what your role is like. And wow, there is no organisation like it, whether it comes to succession planning, how they deal as a HR. Those are some of the best HR directors out there to be able to cope with some of the challenges that football throws up. So maybe get someone in the future on the podcast.
Yeah, years ago I spent a day with a Premier League football club, and it happened to be the day they sacked their manager. And that was just like the HRD kind of took a call and they went, yeah, you're going to have to go. I can't tell you what it is, but you'll find out on Sky Sports by the time you get home. True story. I just happened to pick a good day. So thank you both. That's John, you're coming back in a year's time.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Trish, maybe even earlier. I'd like to thank both of our guests for all their inputs. Remember, we publish new episodes every fortnight. Quick reminder for all of the CIPD members, our annual CPD audit is coming out this October, so make sure that you do update your CPD records. It's really important that you keep up to date. The world is changing. Your skills need to too. So make sure that you go onto the website and update that. My name's David D'Souza, and this has been, and probably will be next time we're on as well, the HR People Pod. Thank you.